Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sports Mole's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law, and we're here to discuss game week 16 Premier League predictions, the final game week of the season. It's been a very quick turnaround. Some teams are playing two games in a couple of days. And starting off with that, two of those teams are Crystal Palace and Leicester. They kick off at 3 p.m. today, so let's get straight into it. How do you see this one going, Matt?
I've got a draw here, to be honest, of 1-1. I just think coming off the back, everything I looked at it to start with, and I was obviously leaning towards Leicester, but just think Palace, I mean, they need a result, don't they? Two poor results in a row. The Liverpool one was obviously really disappointing, but to then lose 3-0 at Villa is not. I mean, as well as Villa are playing, so they weren't quite good in that game at all, Palace. They were very disappointing at both ends of the field. So I think it's obviously the Leicester game. Manchester United, I mean, they did well to call themselves back. Was it a fair result in the end, the Leicester-Manchester United? I'd probably say possibly, but I don't think Leicester had too many clear-cut chances. They were slightly fortunate with the Jamie Vardy equaliser late on, but obviously Vardy's having another fantastic season. And Leicester's first draw of the season. I mean, we both backed the 2-2, didn't we, in that game? Just fancied they would pick up their first draw. And I think they're going to have another one here, to be honest. They're sitting third in the table. Leicester, obviously, only 4 points off Liverpool after Liverpool's dropped points. So it's a big game for Leicester, and it's one that they will have to win, I think, if they're going to, really push high up the table. But I've just got a draw here. Palace at home. They held Tottenham, didn't they, not so long ago? They're capable of picking up big results at home, and wasn't that sure about Leicester the other day. I thought they were a little bit disappointed. Looked a little bit leggy, to be honest. So, yeah, 1-1 here.
I think this quick turnaround does open up the possibilities for surprise results. Certainly this time of year, we always see a lot of goals and a lot of surprise results. And with this quick turnaround, it'll be even more so. But having said that, I have gone for a Leicester win here. I think their away form is very impressive. Liverpool's the only game they haven't won away from home in the Premier League this season. They've beaten the likes of Arsenal, Leeds, Tottenham, Manchester City on the road. Crystal Palace will obviously pose a different threat than that, but they've beaten Sheffield United, Leicester have, and West Brom away from home. So they've been able to beat those teams who might sit in a little bit more against them. Crystal Palace, obviously, their last home game was that 7-0 against Liverpool. We don't expect that to happen many times, of course. So they'll certainly want an improvement on that. But the same was true that we said before the Aston Villa game. They would want a reaction to that 7-0 defeat. They didn't really get one. 3-0 against Aston Villa is a really disappointing result. And Aston Villa could have and probably should have had more in that game. So to have conceded 10 goals without reply in the last two games over Christmas, it's been a bit of a nightmare run of form for Roy Hodgson's side. They can be a difficult team to beat. They haven't shown it in those last two games, but those two games before that, they did show it. Draws against Tottenham and West Ham. But I just fancy Leicester here. I think that it'll be interesting to see team selections with all these games, to be honest, with the quick turnaround, which could affect things, of course, because a lot of teams will have to rotate and keep their squads fresh. But for me, I just see Leicester coming out on top here. I've gone for a 2-0 win. We just spoke about Aston Villa there. Once again, in really good form, back-to-back 3-0 wins, 4 clean sheets in a row. They take on a Chelsea side, which is reeling a little bit. 1 win in their last 5 across all competitions. And that defeat against Arsenal, of course, Arsenal were in really poor form heading into that match. Chelsea, 3 defeats in the last 4 games now. How do you see this one going?
It's a really big game for Chelsea, isn't it? I thought they were really poor against Arsenal, to be fair, as well as Arsenal did. I thought they got a lot of credit, Arsenal, and rightly so. There was a lot of youngsters in the team, wasn't it? But Chelsea, really, really disappointing. It was a strange performance, not a lot happening. And this is a very, very dangerous game for them. This is Villa at home is, in seasons gone by, last season, you'd fancy probably a not home banker, but you'd fancy to get the points, quite comfortably. But it's a really, really tough game, isn't it? We've seen how Villa have played on the road this season. Obviously, Villa will be without Tyrone Mings. He was sent off, wasn't he? Barkley obviously can't play, so they're going to be missing a couple of important players. But Watkins, Grealish, El Ghazi, they're all playing terrifically well. You mentioned team selection in the last clip, and you fancy Chelsea will make some changes. James and Chilwell were both slightly injured, weren't they, ahead of the Arsenal game? They both came in and started. You fancy it might be Azpilicueta and Emerson might come in. Kai Havertz maybe get a start. Timo Werner was disappointing again, wasn't he? Taken off. Tammy Abraham went through the middle. He was through the middle to start with and obviously got on the score sheet. But Chelsea, a little bit concerning, a little bit of pressure on Frank Lampard's future. I mean, look at the table now. They dropped down to 8th. 7 points off the top. It's a big advantage at this stage for Liverpool, and Villa sitting ahead of them. Yeah, I think I mentioned it the other week. Villa having 2 games in hand as well is massive, isn't it? The position where they are on the table, 8 wins from 13 games is terrific. But I just got a feeling for Chelsea here. I think at home, Villa missing a couple of important players. It's going to be a very, very, very tough game. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw or Villa, but just Chelsea here 2-1.
Yeah, I've actually gone exactly the same, and it's one I went back and forth on because, as you mentioned, Aston Villa are in such good form at the moment. And yeah, sitting above Chelsea in the table. There's quite a few games where the two teams are sort of level on points or one place above each other in this game week, and this is one of them. Aston Villa just above them on goal difference. But you mentioned those 2 games in hand. To have picked up the same amount of points as Chelsea, having played two games fewer, 1 point fewer than Man City and Tottenham, having played fewer games than both of them. They win those 2 games in hand. They're 1 point off the top of the table, Liverpool. So, yeah, they've had an incredible season so far. And this is another game they'll fancy their chances because they're flying at the moment, and they'll fancy their chances going into every game. The fact that they've beaten the likes of Liverpool so convincingly as well so far this season will give them such confidence. But yeah, just like you, I've just got a feeling for Chelsea in this one. The form book says it should be Aston Villa, but Chelsea have still got those great players, and I think their squad, a few people have said they've got maybe the best squad in the Premier League when everyone's fit. They've got certainly a lot of options. So these sorts of times of year when they're rotating quite a lot, I think it'll really come into its own, that squad. And I think, yeah, like you, I'm just backing them to win this one 2-1. And yeah, get a much needed win because their form has really tailed off. Lampard always said they weren't really title contenders even when the form was going, and I think he's been proven right in these last few games. They've really tailed off, and those are the sorts of games and runs you can't be going on if you are going to win the title. Also on Monday night today at 8 p.m. is Everton versus Manchester City. Everton got that win over Sheffield United last time out. They're back in decent form, rose up to second in the table, really took advantage of most of the teams around them in the table dropping points. I think every member apart from them of the top 7 from last game week dropped points, and Everton won to rise up to second place. Manchester City seem to be finding their feet again. That 2-0 win over Newcastle wasn't quite as emphatic as both of us expected last week, but another comfortable victory for them, another clean sheet. They seem to be keeping a lot of them, and they're up to 6th place. Obviously got a game in hand over most of the teams around them in the table, and win that, and they go level on points with Everton, who are second. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I've gone City here 2-1. I just think Everton, as well as they've played recently and sitting second in the table. Obviously, I've seen them play disappointing this season against Manchester United twice. Obviously, they were comfortably beaten in the EFL Cup with a strong side, to be honest, that Ancelotti put out. And I just think missing Richarlison and Rodriguez, it looks like they'll both be out again of this game. They're 2 huge players, aren't they, for Everton? And Gordon came in last time. You'd fancy, will Bernard get a start? You can tell Ancelotti isn't convinced by Bernard the way he brought him on against United in the Cup, and you can just tell he's not convinced by that. And missing those 2 players just makes me edge towards City. And watching City recently has been interesting. I don't think they're going to be a team that puts up massive scores on a regular basis this season. They want to be tighter at the back. Obviously, put the 3 points on the board, which they did last time out against Newcastle. It was a professional performance rather than a really impressive one. Obviously, they're missing some players at the moment. Gabriel Jesus and Walker, coronavirus, haven't they? They've been struck down, so they're out of this game. Apart from that, Garcia's injured as well, but Aguero might come in for a start here. You've got some fantastic players going forward, and like you say, you mentioned the table. You do expect them to move forward. Say they're only 6 points off the top, like you said, with that game in hand. So it's so tight, and I think the picture around February will start to get a bit of an idea of maybe which sides can challenge Liverpool or be up in the top 4. Can Everton sustain what they're doing? Can Leicester? It's a big game, and I almost want to draw. Maybe the draw was the easy option. I feel like you're going to go a draw here, but I just thought Everton, I've seen them play quite poorly at Goodison Park on a few occasions. City, quiet, bumbling along at the minute, 3 wins in a row in all competitions, and obviously they need to win. So I just fancy City, a very, very tight game, but 2-1.
I've actually gone exactly the same. Yeah, I fancy City as well. I think Everton, they are finding form. They've beaten Chelsea and Arsenal recently at home, so I won't be too surprised to see them get something out of the game. But I think Man City are beginning to find their stride. One of the most disappointing aspects for them is the level of Kevin De Bruyne at the moment. He's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not reaching the same heights as he did last season, where he rightly won one of the Players of the Year awards, and he was just head and shoulders above everyone else in the league last season, wasn't he, Kevin De Bruyne? In terms of the pure quality of his passing and his assist record and everything like that. So he isn't quite hitting those levels at the moment. Once that happens, maybe they'll start to rack up a few more goals. Sergio Aguero obviously now back fit, maybe not 100% yet, but he's had his injury problems this first half of the season. If they can keep him fit second half of the season, they'll start to score more goals, because the most surprising thing I think about Man City's season so far is 21 goals scored from 14 games. They've scored fewer than anyone else in the top half of the table, which you really don't expect from Man City usually. So that is an aspect they will want to improve. Obviously that 2-0 win over Newcastle last time out employed a slightly different system as well there, Pep Guardiola did in that game. So it'll be interesting to see if he sticks with that. He's another one who likes to rotate at the best of times, so probably will in this match as well. But yeah, like you, I've just gone for a 2-1 Man City win here. I've just got a sneaky feeling, sort of like Chelsea. And like that Chelsea-Aston Villa game, it's the team who is not part of the big six, as we like to say, who is actually above their opponents in the table of going into this one. So the form book and the league table maybe suggests Everton should get something out of this game. But yeah, like you, I just fancy Man City to get the 2-1 win in this one. On Tuesday, that starts with Brighton versus Arsenal. Arsenal got that much needed win over Chelsea last time out, 3-1 victory to end their long winless run. I think it was their first win in the Premier League since November 1st, that victory over Manchester United. So they're turning up for some of the big games at least, but still down in 15th place after 15 games of the season with 17 points. That victory certainly was a start, and Arteta said he wants it to be the catalyst to really kick on for the rest of the season, but they've got a long way to go, and I think it's probably too late now to salvage even a top 4 challenge. They've got a long way to go. It is packed there, but they've just had such a poor start to the season. They've lost more than half their league games. Brighton, on the other hand, they're just one place behind Arsenal. Now the gap is 4 points. They do need to start turning these draws into victories, don't they? What is it? 7 draws from their 15 games this season. There's more than anyone else in the league. Another one against West Ham last time out, 2-2, conceded that late equaliser to Thomas Souček. And 3 draws in a row now, which makes it 6 Premier League games without a win. I said in the last podcast that, when you're down there, picking up points on a regular basis is good to keep ticking over. If you finish the season having drawn every single game, 38 points, more often than not, you'll stay in the division. So it's probably good enough at the moment to be staying up. Certainly it's good enough to keep them out of the relegation zone as things stand, these draws. But when you're playing well and you've got the chances to win games, you do want to be turning those into wins. It's not like nicking a draw when you're playing badly or scoring a late goal to get a draw rather than conceding a late goal to give up a win. And recently, obviously, games against Fulham and Sheffield United, both teams down there towards the bottom of the table with them. So Graham Potter will be desperate to start turning some of those draws into victories just to give themselves a bit more space to the relegation zone, because 2 points is certainly not safe at the moment. Having said that, I don't see them getting it here. I've said the last few weeks it's pretty hard to back Arsenal, but that win over Chelsea should just give them a lot more confidence. And I'm actually backing Arsenal to get this one 1-0.
1-0, yeah, I've gone completely different. I've gone 2-2 here. I just think Arsenal, as well as they played against Chelsea, I do think they were helped by really poor Chelsea performance. I thought Chelsea were pretty horrible, to be honest, in that game, and Arsenal deserve credit for that. But interesting to see what Arteta does moving forward when it's team selection. Obviously, they've got a lot of good young players. Martinelli, I think, is the one that stands out for me. I think he's a really, really good player. Saka's obviously going to play because Saka's their best player with Tierney. I think they're 2. And Smith Rowe going to be quite good enough to be a regular starter for Arsenal in that number 10 position? I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. Is he good enough to take them to where they want to be? I'm not sure, but very interesting. Will Aubameyang come back into the side for this one? Obviously, he's had his injury problems recently. It's really interesting to see what Arteta does in this game, because a lot of players, like Willian, not performed at all for him, have they, this season? Been really, really disappointing. And obviously got some, they've got some really good young players. And even when there was talk of relegation, I never thought that was a slight possibility for Arsenal. It's all about their top 4 challenge. They're 10 points off fourth at the moment. Play the game more than United in fourth. I don't think that's possible. It's possible in terms of points, but I don't think anywhere near good enough or consistent enough to do that. But it's a big game, isn't it? Brighton, watched the West Ham game, and they were unfortunate not to win that game. I don't think West Ham were good at all, to be honest. But it's not the end of the world. But the thing that would worry me from Brighton's point of view, I think they've only won once in the Premier League since September 20th. One win since then. That's an awfully long time. And you mentioned picking up draws, but I think we both like the way they play, Brighton, don't we? A good manager, good set of players, a good way of playing. But I am fearful of them. They find it difficult to win games. And you look at their games coming up. They play Wolves at home after this, and Manchester City away, and they're two very, very tough games. So it's a big, big game. I can see where you're coming from Arsenal, and I did almost go Arsenal, but I've backed Arsenal recently, to be fair, to pick up some points, and so I'm not being harsh on them. I just think Brighton will get a point here. So entertaining 2-2 draw.
2-2 for Matt in that one. Okay, Burnley versus Sheffield United is also on Tuesday at 6 p.m. 17th place versus bottom of the table. Sheffield United fell to yet another defeat, their 13th defeat of the season from 15 games against Everton. And crucially, again, didn't score. Burnley and Sheffield United are the two joint lowest scorers in the Premier League, both with 8 goals apiece. So this one would appear to scream out maybe the goalless draw we've been carrying on predicting. I haven't actually gone for that. I've gone for a narrow Burnley win. I think they were unfortunate against Leeds. Obviously, there was a big debate about that disallowed goal for Ashley Barnes, and was it a penalty on Ben Mee rather than a foul on Meslier? I think it certainly shines a light on the protection goalkeepers get, which is maybe something which needs to be debated a bit more, because that, any contact seems to be a foul on the keeper, whereas that seemed to be a foul the other way round. And Burnley certainly piled the pressure on there. So I do see them getting a goal against Sheffield United. And before that game against Leeds, Burnley had been in really good form. And in the second half of the Leeds game, they played pretty well as well. So they do seem to be turning things around. Only 2 points, obviously, gap over the relegation zone. So they need to carry on picking up points. But the signs are there, I think. And I think Sean Dyche will feel rightly aggrieved at the officials in the Leeds game. And if it wasn't for some decisions they made, even the penalty Leeds got, I don't think was a penalty. I think it was actually a really good challenge from Nick Pope. So I think he'll feel aggrieved, and he'll feel that if the officials did their job properly, that he would have gone, another game unbeaten, which would have made 5 games unbeaten in the Premier League and only 1 defeat in 8. So they're picking up points on a regular basis, which obviously isn't the same for Sheffield United. Still 2 points from 15 games this season. Always really hard to back them. These are the sorts of games they will be looking at as their best chances to pick up points, maybe a scrappy draw at Turf Moor. But I don't see it happening for them. I obviously can't see a high-scoring affair considering their attacking troubles this season. But yeah, I've just gone for 1-0. I suspect I'm going to predict you've gone for a goalless draw in this one.
I've indeed gone for the goalless draw. Yeah, it was the screaming out, isn't it? We've got to get one at some point. You mentioned goals this season for both have been very hard to come by, and I do agree with you with Burnley. I think they were unfortunate at the weekend. I do think they're playing quite well recently. Their recent run's been pretty good, isn't it? And after a disappointing start to the season, and they're obviously outside of the relegation zone at this stage, and they'll be keen to push further forward. Sheffield United, I mean, we see it's still time, isn't there? But 2 points from 15 games, 26 goals conceded is. I mean, they don't tend to get put away, do they, with big scorelines? United threatened to beat them by a few. It ended up 3-2. Everton 1-0. Leicester 2-1. I mean, looking for that, they lost at Southampton 3-0, but Southampton were probably a little bit flattered in that game in terms of the scoreline. But they are in a lot of games, and that is probably a little bit more worrying that they're in so many and they're still getting beat. Maybe it's a mentality thing. The quality, obviously, has dropped this season significantly from what they were putting in last season. Some, O'Connell being injured, I don't think that helps. And there's pressure on Chris Wilder, I think, on the money he spent, and they're obviously going to stick with him. But it's a poor start to the season, whatever way you look at it. And Burnley will be really, really keen to win this one. They'll be eyeing 3 points, but I'm just struggling again. I've gone a goalless one, and I'm pretty confident of that, to be honest. I mean, both teams, like I say, problems in the final third, so goalless.
Yeah, I mean, out of many games this season, it's probably got the best shout to be in that goalless draw being after. But yeah, I've just gone for 1 goal. Matt, goalless draw in that Burnley Sheffield United. Also at 6 p.m. on Tuesday is Southampton versus West Ham. Southampton drew with Fulham in a goalless draw last time out, which would be another disappointing result for them, really. Off the back of that 1-0 defeat to Man City and the 1-0 draw with Arsenal, which the way they'd be played, they probably regard as maybe disappointing results as well, heading into both those games, which is a sign of the progress they've made. But, they were up in the top 4 prior to that Arsenal game, and now they're down to 9th. So that's a sign of how quickly things can change if you just drop a few points in a few consecutive games. West Ham have also hit a run of dropping points in games. They were flying high not too long ago. They're down in 10th. This is another one of those games where just one play separates the two sides in the table. So both sides in growing need of a victory to get back on track after really positive starts to the season. How do you see this one going?
Yes, it's an interesting one. Like you say, both sides recently, who I think overall they'll be pleased with their start to the season, but like you say, it changes so quickly. We saw how Tottenham went from the top to, they went down to 8th, didn't they? They're up, they're now in 5th. But you can move very, very quickly. You pick up a couple of poor results, and I think West Ham recently, I mentioned it, they are, they have got the results in them like that, haven't they? Palace at home, draw, Brighton at home, draw. And they're not bad results, but they're disappointing from, talking about where West Ham want to be this season, especially after winning at Leeds, December the 11th. They won at Leeds and then haven't won since then. Southampton, you mentioned, similar story, really. Arsenal, the game at Arsenal, I thought they were disappointed in the second half. I thought they really should have won that game. City was a tight game, but they would have been looking to win at Fulham, wouldn't they? There's no doubt about that. It's not a good result, but it's a tight game, isn't it? It's a tough one. Southampton play Liverpool, don't they, at home the next game? So they won't want to go 4 games without a win. But I've actually just got a draw here. I think West Ham, they are difficult to beat these days. I think obviously they lost to Chelsea, but it was Chelsea were flattered in that game, and they are capable of picking up good results. I think a point at Southampton would be a really good result. Southampton's form's dropped off a touch, so they won't be flying going into this game. And yeah, I'm just struggling here. I think a draw. I don't think either manager would be too disappointed, to be honest, at this stage, especially the quick turnaround of games. So yeah, 1-1 here.
Yeah, I've gone for a draw as well. I've gone for 2-2. I can see a few more goals. I think, obviously, Southampton without Danny Ings have been struggling a bit more for goals in recent games. Not found the back of the net in the last 2. But West Ham, that 2-2 draw against Brighton, just made me go for something similar in this game. I think there are usually goals in these sorts of games, especially at this time of year. So yeah, I've just gone for a 2-2 here. I think Southampton, both teams do need to get back to winning ways, but they're just hitting a patch of difficult form at the moment. Southampton's home form in general has been really good this season. So if either team was to win, I'd probably go for them. But yeah, I've just got a feeling for the draw here. Yeah, like you, I've gone for spoils to be shared, but 2-2. All right. Also on 6 p.m. at 6 p.m. is West Brom Leeds. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm having some serious lighting issues today. But we'll continue moving back in power on.
Yeah, keep moving it.
West Brom versus Leeds. West Brom still winless in a long time, only 1 win all season, but obviously coming off the back of that really good point at Anfield where Sam Allardyce is, that's exactly what he wanted to happen, soak up the pressure. Obviously, he wouldn't want to concede such an early goal, but then to limit Liverpool to very few shots on target and then hit on the break. They actually missed their big chance on the break, but then scored through a corner, which they never really should have got. Liverpool gave that away to them. They play a Leeds side who, as we mentioned, was a little bit fortunate to get away with a 1-0 win over Burnley, but a much-needed win to bounce back from that 6-2 defeat to Manchester United before that. Leeds in 12th now, and West Brom still down in 19th despite that point. West Brom points in their last 2 away games at Man City and at Liverpool, both under different managers, of course, but really, really impressive results there. But at home, their last result was a 3-0 defeat to Aston Villa, and before that, a 5-1 defeat to Crystal Palace. So they need to shape things up at home. Do you see them getting anything from this game?
Yeah, I've actually gone a bit, a bit rogue here. I've gone out there. I've actually gone 1-0 to West Brom. I just had a feeling for West Brom in this game. I think they were, you mentioned the Liverpool game. Obviously, you'll be frustrated from a Liverpool point of view, but it wasn't like they were peppering the West Brom goal, were they? Sam Johnson had to make a really smart save, didn't he, late on from Firmino, I think, wasn't it? The header came in. It was a super, super save. But apart from that, I think there was only a couple of shots on target from Liverpool in that game. I don't think they were great at all. Obviously, that is credit to West Brom, the way they pressed, the way they defended, and especially after the way they got beat by Villa, I thought Sam Allardyce would probably thinking, "God, this is a bigger job than I thought it would be." Because you do look at their squad, and they're obviously short in a lot of areas, but I do think there's quality in there, and there's players that can play the way Sam Allardyce wants to play, and they're not going to be expressive, are they? They're not going to go after sides. The way the one that stands out for me is the way they played against Chelsea early this season, and obviously raced into a 3-0 lead, didn't they? But I don't think I've seen many of those this season. Leeds, I still think Leeds are quite a strange team. I mean, it was a weird game against Burnley, wasn't it? Obviously, they're capable of scoring loads, they concede loads, but I just fancy these being tight. West Brom have played excellently against the best side in the league in terms of restricting them, so they can do that to Leeds. No problem if they play as well as they did against Liverpool and Manchester City as well. So as good as Leeds going forward, I looked at this game and thought, can I back Leeds to score a few? But just can't really, to be honest. I think West Brom, it'd be a massive win, wouldn't it? It'd move them level on points with Fulham. Obviously, Fulham, depending on what Fulham do in their game, but it'd be a huge, huge win if they could. And yeah, just feeling for Lee. I sometimes get these feelings. Sometimes you get feelings when you open up 24-point leads, Barney. So I've thrown a result out there, and I've gone 1-0 Leeds.
So 1-0 West Brom, you mean?
Sorry, 1-0 West Brom. Yeah,
because I've got 1-0 Leeds.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see the logic behind going for West Brom, or at least a draw, because you look at their recent matches, and this one's probably going to be more similar to Man City and Liverpool games than it was to the West Brom, to the Aston Villa or Newcastle games, because Leeds will see a lot of the ball. West Brom will try and maybe sit deep and then hope to catch Leeds on the break like they did with Liverpool. But yeah, I struggled to back West Brom. I can't see them scoring too many goals, as you say. And at home, their form just hasn't been that good. Leeds will create chances. They go gung-ho quite a lot. They changed their style a little bit for Burnley, which was interesting after all the talk about them maybe changing their style when they're 2-0 down after 3 minutes against Manchester United. To me, I was just sticking to his guns. They did change it a little bit for Burnley. So in those sorts of games and these sorts of games, maybe they change their style a bit to grind out the wins. And that's what I can see them doing here. I've just gone for 1-0 to Leeds here, which will be a big win for them. Could take them into the top half of the table, depending on results elsewhere. And obviously further away from the relegation zone. I don't think any Premier League team's ever been relegated having got 20 points from their first 15 games. So they'll be pretty confident now that they've got enough to stay up. I think a lot of fans would have been confident even from the start of the season they had enough to stay up. But there was just a run a few weeks ago where they started slipping towards that, down in 14th place for a while, I think they were. So I think I can see them getting another win, and back-to-back 1-0 wins over Burnley and West Brom are the sorts of wins you need to be getting to be finishing in the top half of the table, for all the entertaining football they've played this season in the 5-2 win over Newcastle and then the 6-2 defeat against United. It's those wins you grind out against those teams towards the bottom of the table who won't make it easy for you, which can prove even more valuable come the end of the season. I can see them getting one of them in a 1-0 win. 8 p.m. on Tuesday is Manchester United Wolves, a really good-looking game, this one. Man United obviously dropped points away from home for the first time in a long time at Leicester City. 2-2 that one was. But they're still unbeaten in a while. They're up to 4th place now. What are they? 5 points off leaders Liverpool with a game in hand over them. So still certainly up there in the conversation. Wolves got that point against Tottenham, the late one through that late header. But obviously not in the best form themselves at the moment. 1 win from the last 5 Premier League games. The draw against Tottenham will be a boost to them and will in many ways feel almost like a victory. But obviously it's not 3 points on the board. And they're now down in the bottom half of the table, won 6 and lost 6 of their opening 15 games and only 15 goals scored, which will probably be the main concern. For me, I can see this one being a close game, and Man United obviously have had so many problems at home until that 6-2 thrashing of Leeds in their last home game. I can see them picking up another win here, Man United. They're in really good form at the moment in the league. I can see them winning 2-1 here.
2-1, yes, exactly the same as me. It's the one that stood out. I think you mentioned the Wolves game. They could have won it, couldn't they, late on? I think it was Fabio Silva had that header late on. There was a cross coming into the box and should have buried it against Lloris, and Lloris comfortable save in the end. But I think Pedro Neto has been really good this season for Wolves. I think, obviously, I mentioned it loads of times, they miss Jimenez. I think they miss Johnny as well, Johnny Castro, the wing back, and obviously Willy Bolly's out at the moment, Dendonka. They've got a few injuries ahead of this game, and they'll be confident. I think they're away form recently. Like I mentioned, they lost 3 of their last 4 on the road, and that 4-0 defeat at Liverpool. Probably we both expected a little bit more from Wolves in that game, and it's going to be a really tough game at Old Trafford. You mentioned United, and it was very frustrating. I think the manner of conceding the second goal against Leicester, especially after taking the lead. Cavani came on and was fantastic, and Fernandes, who's just an incredible player, transformed the club, let alone the team, the whole club, and if they could have held on for a win there, it would have put them so, really on Liverpool's tail, especially after Liverpool dropped points. But it's still not a bad result, is it? Leicester were above them in the table and did pick up a point there. It's a really big game. There's a few injury doubts to this game. Rashford had a little bit of a shoulder niggle at the end of the game. It looks like he probably will be okay. Lindelof, Wan-Bissaka, possibly both out. So it's going to have to be changed at the back. Will Tanzabi play right back? Bailly keep his place at the back. Central defence obviously is going to have to be a bit of a reshuffle. Obviously, Pogba was fantastic when he came on against Leicester as well. So he'll come into the thinking of Solskjaer, and depending on if Rashford's fit. So you feel like there'll have to be a bit of a switch around for United, but I think they've got the squad good enough. Mason Greenwood, I would be very surprised if he did not come into the side on the right. I'd be surprised if he didn't. I think he should play. It's a big game, isn't it? Like I say, United's position, their form's good. They're playing well. I thought they were really good against Leicester. I don't think it was a point where they picked up. They thought, "Oh, we've been fortunate here to get a point." I thought they were very dominant during stages of the game, and Leicester obviously always going to be dangerous with the players they've got, but really good wins. So really good points, I should say. But yeah, it's a big game for United, especially as they play Villa at home, don't they, on Friday night after this one, and that is a very, very tough game. And then they have League Cup and FA Cup, so there'll be a bit of time after these two games, and they'll want to win them both, no doubt about that, before they play City in the EFL Cup. So I just fancy United here. Very, very close game, but Wolves' away form makes me think that probably they will get beat again here. So 2-1 Manchester United.
Both gone for 2-1 United in that game. On Wednesday, there's a double header. Tottenham versus Fulham is first up at 6 p.m. Tottenham now 4 games without a win after all that title talk before that. Down in 5th place now, having been leading the league heading into the Liverpool defeat. 2 points from the last 12 available, which is a run of form they really need to turn around sooner rather than later, because they've slipped from leading Liverpool on goal difference to being 6 points behind them now. So if they can't really allow that gap to grow too much bigger, but they will be heavy favourites and very confident of coming out on top against the Fulham side, who, to be fair to them, have been starting to pick up points recently. 4 draws in a row, including decent ones against Liverpool and Southampton, both up there in the top half of the table. And prior to that, obviously, defeat to Man City, but before that, beating Leicester away from home. So there has certainly been an improvement. And I mentioned it with Brighton earlier, and it's a bit of a similar situation. If you keep up picking up points and keep that points tally ticking over, more often than not, you will stay in the division. Obviously, Fulham do have a bit of ground to make up, 2 points to safety now. So they do need a win along the road somewhere. But I don't think too many Fulham fans will think it's likely to come here. They might be confident of a draw considering Tottenham's recent slump in form, but not much of that has come at home. They did lose to Leicester at home, but I think Leicester have got a lot more about them than Fulham and a lot more threat to Tottenham's the way Tottenham play, and Fulham will be mainly relying on the counter-attack, which Tottenham utilise so well themselves as well. I think this is a game where you'd expect Mourinho to make a few changes, despite having the Wednesday rest, so they've got 3 days of rest, more than a few teams have got. But he's got a good squad available to him, lots of strength and depth, and he'll probably utilise that in a game where he'd expect a much changed squad to still have enough to come out on top. And I expect that as well. To be fair, I think Fulham certainly do deserve credit for turning their season around to a certain extent, because earlier in the season, I think a lot of people, myself included, pretty much doomed them to relegation after a few games of the season, because they did not look like a Premier League team, certainly defensively. So they deserve credit for turning their season around to that extent, but I can't see them getting anything out of this game. I can see Tottenham returning to winning ways. I'll come for a 2-0 win.
Yeah, I've also gone Tottenham 2-0 here. I think, like you say, it's difficult to back Fulham in this game, isn't it? As well as they've played recently. And I've said it a few times, I do think Fulham have been, quite good recently in terms of results and performances. Obviously, unbeaten in 4, like you mentioned, 4 draws, which they're not getting them out of trouble. If they could have turned a couple of those into wins and obviously moved further forward, but they're still ticking along, and they play Burnley after this one away, which is obviously a huge game. The Tottenham game against Wolves, very, very strange. I'm not that surprised that they didn't go after the second goal, but you just fancied that the game was there for them after they went 1-0 up, wasn't it? That it's so early, and go and get the second, go and get the third, kill the game. But they were waiting and waiting for Wolves to. It's a long time to hold on for a 1-0. And like you mentioned, if they're winning games, that way is fine of playing. If you're not winning games, which they're not at the moment, then the fans and the players start to get a little bit little bit tetchy. So it's obviously it's a big game. You mentioned that Mourinho will make changes. You fancy you will want you know. Alderweireld was left on the bench. You know, Sissoko, Bergwijn, they'll probably all come back into the side. Sergio Aurier possibly as well at right back. So there will be a bit of a switch. Fulham's situation at the moment in terms of injuries is pretty good. You know, obviously Scott Parker wasn't on the touchline, was he? He's self-isolating at the moment. So they still put in a good performance against Southampton without him. So their form's good. They've got a good squad there in terms of, you know, absentees into this game. They're looking quite good at the moment. So, but similar to you, really, I'm struggling to back them in this game. 2-0 Tottenham.
I've gone for 2-0 Tottenham. Okay, the final match of this game week and the final match of 2020 in the Premier League is Newcastle versus Liverpool. We mentioned Liverpool earlier. They'll be really disappointed. They threw 2 points away against West Brom. I think the saving grace for them is that pretty much everyone behind them also dropped points. So their lead at the top is still 3 points, but still dropping points. I think it was only the second time since January 2019 that they've dropped points in the Premier League at home, which is an incredible record. But to have done that against West Brom will be hugely disappointing, especially as they took the lead so early. And they were creating really good openings. Robertson put a few really good crosses into the box, which Salah almost got on the end of. At that stage, it looked like Liverpool would run away with it, but second half in particular, they just didn't show enough. Maybe a bit of complacency crept in. Maybe it got a little bit too easy for them, but they just didn't show enough, and they got stung on the counter-attack. Alisson made a really good save from the one-on-one, and then Curtis Jones made the mistake to give a sloppy corner away, and obviously they were punished from that one. So, you know, they do only have themselves to blame for dropping points in that one, as Jurgen Klopp said after the game. But it was a huge shock for West Brom to become only the second team. I think it's West Brom and Burnley, the only two teams who have come away with anything from Anfield in all that time, in almost 2 years, which is, you know, you've got to keep it in perspective. It's still a magnificent record for Liverpool, but those two, they'd want a fully winning record for those, because they would have expected to win both of those games. They'll probably also expect to win this game against the Newcastle side, who are in, you know, a bit of a slump in form. 4 games without a win across all competitions, including a heavy defeat to Leeds, EFL Cup exit to Brentford, the defeat to Man City last time out, of course, and a draw at home to Fulham, which would have been pretty disappointing for them as well. They're 13th in the table. It's not a terrible position they're in at the moment. They'll be relatively happy with their points tally and their league position. I think the playing style is probably the main thing for the fans, which they're a bit unhappy with. They're becoming disgruntled at Steve Bruce's, what they perceive as negative tactics, and obviously haven't scored in those last 2 games against Brentford and Man City. So they need to get back on the score sheet. Obviously, it's tough against the Liverpool side, who have struggled away from home this season, but obviously ran riot against Crystal Palace last time out 7-0, where they really showed their clinical edge. Liverpool, another team who are likely to make changes. Klopp has said a lot about his players and the workload on them and the quick turnaround. They haven't got as quick a turnaround as many teams in this game week, but I think there'll still probably be changes as Klopp looks to keep his squad fresh. And the Joel Matip injury would probably just add insult to injury with the West Brom draw, because that leaves Liverpool with no senior fit centre-backs. And obviously Reece Williams came on. I think he didn't cover himself in glory, certainly for the chance on the break and giving away the corner. You'd expect maybe a more experienced centre-back to put that header back into the arms of Alisson, and his lack of pace really got exposed on the counter-attack. So he's still got work to do. I think he's bright spark coming out of it and will get more games for Liverpool, but he's still certainly got work to do to get up to the level of Liverpool's first choice defender. So that is an aspect Newcastle will look to capitalise on, and it'll be interesting to see who Liverpool go with at centre back. Nat Phillips is also an option. Jordan Henson's played there this season. Fortunately for Liverpool, the likes of Thiago is back soon. Maybe even for this game, it might come a little bit too soon, but certainly early 2021 you'd expect him back, which will be a huge boost for Liverpool, and would maybe free up Henderson to go to centre back as another emergency option if they need that, depending on how long Matip's out for. But yeah, I think this one, I expect Newcastle to get a goal because of those defensive issues, but I am still backing Liverpool to win. I can see them coming out on top 2-1 here.
2-1, yeah, exactly what I've gone 2-1. I went 1-0, but I've changed it because of Liverpool's, injury situation and their defensive problems. I don't really think they'll keep a clean sheet here. Callum Wilson. You look at the Newcastle team. Without Callum Wilson, he's got 8 in 12 this season, 8 in the league, which is fantastic numbers, isn't it? Joelinton's got 1, none for Carroll. Gale's got 1, but they're struggling, aren't they, in terms of the final third? Obviously, looks like they're going to be missing some key players again for this one. Shelby looks like he'll be out again, which, is a big part of what they do. Lascelles and St Maximin obviously still struggling with the coronavirus, so we don't know whether they'll probably won't play in this game either. So they're missing some really important players. Obviously, the goalkeeper's still out, Dubravka's still out, and he's a big, one of the top 5-6 goalkeepers in the league for me. So it's a tough game for Newcastle, this one. Liverpool, it was a poor result, wasn't it, against West Brom? The manner of the performance, I don't think they were great at all in terms of creating chances. Listen, they're going to have off games, and they were so good last season. You almost expect them to be that good, every week. But certainly, opens up the league a little bit. United go and win if Tottenham win, and Newcastle and Liverpool drop points here. That closes it again. So it's a big set of fixtures, this one. You fancy there'll be some surprises, and if Newcastle win and beat them, no one predicted West Brom to get a point. So stranger things have happened if Newcastle were to go and win this game. But I just think Newcastle, like you say, their playing style was a little bit disappointing. They're slightly negative in some games, and it's hard to back them against the bigger sides because I think the quality gap is just a lot different, even though Liverpool have got their defensive problems. So, yeah, expecting a tight one, but 2-1 Liverpool.
I've gone for 2-1 Liverpool wins. Right, I've ended up on the other side of the room than I started on because I keep moving back. So that's all we got time for here. Thank you as ever, Matt. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to all our readers and listeners. You can subscribe to this via all the usual podcast channels and on YouTube to make sure you don't miss an episode. We'll have previews for all these games and many more in the Championship and across Europe over on sportsmole.co.uk. So be sure to check that out. We'll be back in the new year for the next round of predictions. So we hope to see you then. Have a very happy New Year, and thanks for tuning in.